What's good, everybody? This is Y and Z, a conversation between the generations. Which generations? Well, Generation Y, aka the Millennials, represented by myself, Jay Clark. My partner over there represents the Z. You guessed it. They don't have a nickname, they're just Gen Z. Xavier Lewis, who was playing in the snow all over the past weekend. Sir, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing amazing, man. Coming off a very, very busy last since the last time we spoke, dealing with some Taylor
Hey,
Swift fans. But the Swifties weren't all that bad. They weren't all that bad.
blessed you
But
with some gifts. You were getting
bro,
gifts.
let me just say this. Taylor Swift needs to be studied. She needs to do a master class on how this tour is attracting all ages. There were infants all the way up to 70-year-olds going to this concert. It's unheard of.
I'm not going to say anything to get that hive on my behind. We're just going to have some fun this week. Like, share, subscribe. YZ The Divide. J Clark 787. The Real Xavier Lewis. We are available wherever you get your podcast and YouTube. Please help support. We thank you for any time you do so choose to spend with us. And because who knows what next week is going to bring, we're going to
Yeah.
we're going to be a little lighthearted this week and just have some fun and get into some just kookiness, a little,
Why not?
little left, but not crazy, crazy. We're not going that kind of left. Um, I like to watch adventure shows. It's one of the programs me and my wife can agree on at the same time. Because when you're not a single brother like my Gen Z partner over there, you gotta come to a compromise sometimes on what you watch on TV. And so we really enjoy adventure stuff. So think like Josh Gates with Expedition Unknown. And there's another series. There's a series on Netflix where this archaeologist guy is looking back at history and stuff. And so watching this one of the latest episodes, he's at Petra. And for any of those who don't know, Petra is you ever seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the place where the Holy Grail. That's Petra.
Right.
That's a real archaeological site. Not the inside, but that outside rock face, the carving. That's a real site. It's called Petra. And so he was there for this latest season and investigating the area and the civilization that was there. And so one of the things he was looking at was these rock carvings on the side of a mountain. And so what they did during the episode was they strapped on some rock climbing gear and rappelled down the side of the rock face to get a digital scan of these carvings to, be able to read them, study them, interpret them, and whatnot. And they struggled getting there. And so for me, and so like I said, they're hanging on their rock climbing gear off this. There's no ledge. They're just the face of this mountain scanning. And so I'm watching it thinking like, how did the civilization that did this way back, way back, because this is ancient times, get this done with less technology? And because in my head I'm thinking, okay, somebody you need two hands to chisel. You not chiseling with one hand. You need two hands. Ain't nothing to stand on there. I'm like,
You know, the mysteries of this world are so interesting. So interesting. Like to say so many millennia ago, humans, less intelligent humans is what we believe them to be.
don't even go that far. Just go less technologically capable.
Well, intelligence is alongside your technological advancements, correct?
Not to an extent. It depends where you are. We don't know necessarily how smart they were, but we
Right.
do know they have no moving platforms. They have no
Right.
like we know what they
And
didn't
it's
have.
crazy. Well, I mean, do we really know that?
Okay,
That's the point to be made.
okay.
Do
So
we
sorry.
really know what they did and did not have? Because we do know that a lot of those civilizations were very secretive, even to the point where if they did have certain things, they might not even record that they had it, because that would be proof.
So it's interesting you went there because I wasn't quite sure where we would go with this. It's a wide open thing. Like I said, the other show I'm watching on Netflix, he's an archaeologist guy, and he is, I don't want to use the word controversial, but there's a lot in the same community who don't necessarily agree with what he is proposing. And what he's
Mhm.
proposing isn't crazy. As you and I know, because we are melanated people in this European history told world, there is a certain story that we believe is our existence. And, the Bible is a reference for that. Evolution, cavemen, like there's a certain timeline that is accepted as this is the story of the human race and why things are the way they are, how we got here, yada, yada, yada. He's essentially challenging that. Like, look, some of these things aren't adding up. If A is here, then this can't be the story. If B is here, this can't be the story. Like he's finding pockets of civilizations doing things before we
It
would
should have
recognize.
been right, right.
Right. And so they just dropped season 2 on Netflix of his show. The first season was all about how, I don't want to use the word aliens here, but possibly there is a connection between all these different pockets of civilization because they're doing things in a similar manner that lend credit to influence. That because they're not communicating, no cell phones, no emails, no mail. Like this, your pocket is your pocket. And so one of the examples he brought up was, you ever heard of Easter Island?
Yeah.
On
Who
the
hasn't
Pacific
heard of Easter?
Island in the Pacific with all the heads. He's like, you look at how they did their statues. That there's hands. It's the head, the hands in front, and the way they're placed and the details. And he's like, okay, we find that here, but we also find examples of this exact same statue type in a multiple places around the world. You're seeing pictures of examples, and it's like, yeah, there's slight similarities, but the basis of the core, it's the same thing. And he's like, for nobody to be talking to one another, communicating, supposedly, why are we all doing these things in the same way?
Bruh, you have the Mayans over here,
Mm-hmm.
middle, mid America.
Mid America, yep.
Egyptians in Africa. They're making pyramids. The Mayans over here making stacked temples.
Pyramids is another example. Yeah, same.
You know what I'm saying? Like everybody is doing the same thing, but for them not to have any communication, and y'all are telling us, oh, nobody was really doing, transcontinental traveling or anything like that. Okay, if that's what you say, okay, then what else is the deciding factor here that's causing all of these civilizations around the world to do similar things? It's wild to think. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm one of those. I do believe some form of, I don't know, alien or extraterrestrial being, something was influencing them in this manner. And the gist of all of them is they're trying to just go up. They're trying to go upward. That's always been the case. They're trying to reach something
I wouldn't I
at the
wouldn't
top.
focus I wouldn't focus on that. It's almost like what you said, which I challenged you on a little bit earlier, the whole less intelligent thing. Because one of the things is it's not just the pyramid stuff, but it's like literally temple sites with the way doors, windows, and things are aligned with constellations and things in the sky,
Mhm.
a level of math that you're like, okay, yeah, if we assume these people are less intelligent, how the way they're doing things, the solar and winter equinoxes and how the sun sets, like they're really in tune with what is going on around them. And I say it's one of two ways. Either they're more intelligent and more observant than we ever thought them to be, or there is a level of influence in somebody who is, whether they were here before and are just some lost civilization that had all this knowledge and however they do it, something akin Atlantis or whatever it may be, or yeah, some extraterrestrial or somebody from somewhere else who paid us a visit back
You
then and
know,
hasn't been back since, or is it making themselves aware since?
Honestly, I think it's just a blend of both. But on the intelligence part, I think there were like really intelligent people then, but they weren't the majority. And one of two things happens in any society if you're intelligent beyond the majority. You're either ostracized from the society and you're like, okay, well, we don't deal with them. Everybody, you make them a crazy person. Or you become just specifically for whoever the head person in charge is. Because just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're always witty or, cunning and things like that. So I think they did have knowledge of things. And some people, I think, like I said, I think it's a balance of both. So I think there was some sort of influence. I want to make that clear. I think that definitely was happening. But I think there were certain pockets of people in society that were more intelligent than the masses.
I,
Because the
I challenge you a little bit there, because as we see some of these efforts, aka like a pyramid, that's not an individual endeavor. You're not doing that by yourself.
but it's
Well,
not an individual
you
endeavor.
gonna
But
need,
all you need is one mind to think it, one mind
but
to
you need buy-in.
delegate it,
You need buy-in
and
though.
many bodies. But you need many bodies just to do it
Right, and
blindly.
that's where the ostracizing. I don't think you would see the ostracizing here, because you need like the amount of buy-in you would need, and unless it's slave labor, which I can't imagine it all being slave labor. No, these are civilizations work as a
But
community.
power is a power is a hell of a drug though. So
But
like if the smart mind is communicating this to said ruler says, okay, well, we're just gonna delegate it. They don't need to understand it. We're just gonna build it.
right, but so you're not getting ostracized in that point though. So
Oh,
I
right,
think
right,
yeah,
right.
at least
But I do thinking,
knowledge being power is what we hear all the time. So very very easily, yeah, the knowledge, if it's an individual or whatever, is
but I
being
think the
communicated.
societies that didn't take advantage of the people that were intelligent were the societies we don't hear about. So
But
I do think in some instance, some intelligent people probably did get like maybe excommunicated from their environments or their societies.
what do you mean by
And
that?
those are the,
We don't hear about them because that's like it's a mysterious thing out there that we just don't know about that would be
I mean,
essential.
there probably are societies and pockets of people that we never known about because
Oh
they didn't
yeah,
make an
yeah.
impact. Right.
Well, so I that's where the Netflix show is interesting, because that's what he's delving into. He's finding these lost pockets which are connecting the story in terms of it's not that they didn't have impact, it's just they are so remote. But we're seeing in their remoteness, once we do discover their sites, they're doing the same things we're seeing other people do. So I don't think it's a matter of we're only seeing evidence of the intelligence ones. I think it's just the ones we've come across with, because like he's in the Amazon, and they're like, yeah, we're finding these remote pockets, and unfortunately, because these things are so old, it's like you need the digital technology that we have nowadays to be able to scan with drones and the sky
Right.
and things, because these things are overgrown. So it's like, oh, we're seeing features here that aren't natural, that shouldn't be here. Let's go find out. And then they find old sites, and or it's like, oh yeah, here's a foundation of a structure we didn't know anybody was living here. So that's how they're connecting it. Also, one of the ways he's challenged it, like, so back to Easter Island, the heads, there's heads all over. Like there was literally a
Right.
site. And so I think that the timeline on that is like it's 800 years. We believe somebody's been there for
Right.
800 years.
Right.
And it's like he's like, no, based off these statues, one, we have trouble dating them. But two, the biggest thing is in this quarry is it's not just heads. These things actually have full bodies. So they you can excavate and go down like 15, 20 feet and it's still more body. And so he's like, there shouldn't be this much sediment here. Like these things shouldn't be that much covered in dirt and grass for just over 800 years. He's like, that math ain't mathing, because because if you look at pictures, they're not leaning over. There's tornadoes,
Nope.
hurricanes, all kinds. No, because these things are so anchored, like have been so covered in the ground that they have a good foundation. And he's like, yeah, that sediment shouldn't be here if this was done 800 years ago, pointing to something
It's
that we don't even
so,
know who built it, possibly.
and I think it's so interesting, even with like that argument of was there like outside influence? If you look at most of these larger than life structures, they're all religious. Whether it's Christianity, religion, but they're all religious in a sense to whatever deity they worshiped or deities. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I do think in some sense, if that was, there just needs to be a study done, right? About what the lengths people were willing to go and the things that they were doing all in the name of their deities. You know what I'm saying? Or like in the name of whatever they believed, and how it almost, we don't talk about the supernatural a lot, but like how it almost gave them supernatural intelligence, or thing, or it's technology, like this whole conversation we've been having. How in the world did they get those carvings in that mountain?
We don't know how to build a pyramid now.
Exactly. Exactly.
In our advanced civilization, data technology, thoughts, AI, we you we couldn't go out and build a pyramid today.
Just
And
humans,
somehow they did
a
this
couple
thing.
levees, pulleys, all of that.
And somehow they did this thing. Not just like a pyramid, but like the one Egypt, like perfect, perfect, like angles, man, perfect. So let me ask you this, because you brought in religion to this, and I'm just curious. I want to open it up to this. So, like, we don't know what the story is, and as men of faith, we are both men of faith. I'm just a simple old Baptist. You are Kojic, firebread, and you probably dancing right now under this table. So for us, there's that side. How do these two things interchange, intersect for you at all? Does one make it harder for you to believe another? Does one make it easier for you to believe another? Because a lot of people are like, well, the story of God, the story of, like this is how things go. God ain't talking about no aliens, so alien, there's a lot of different arguments, a lot of different things how people interpret. So I'm questioning from your perspective, how, because you said you believe in this
Right.
even this thing. So how do those two coexist for you?
I mean, I think the Bible, our particular, the Christian book, is specifically meant for the Christian experience, right? And I think there are parts of the Bible that support that, other things came from other places. The Bible has a story about the Tower of Babel. First of all, how in the world the Bible proclaims that there was humans building a tower, and God was like, it's about to reach us. How tall does this tower have to be for you to feel like they about to reach you? You know what I'm saying? Like, that has to even in itself be a tall structure that men, or humans were building. So I think in my experience as a man of faith, I don't denounce any of it. I think it all goes into the story that we've been told as children that we didn't really make the connections of, but it kind of makes sense once you start thinking about it. So for instance, the Bible talks about how fallen angels came down and slept with women and their children were giants. The Bible says that point blank, period. They were called Nephilims. So in my head, while there might not be an alien how it is depicted on TV or something like that, there were items and creatures descending from the skies, different, probably brightly lit up, coming down and giving, knowledge and sleeping with humans. I do think that what we think to be aliens are just fallen angels. You know what I'm saying? If we just look at it from like the Christian point of view. So, I mean, who knows? They might be coming from a different planet. All I know is my Bible tells me, that angels came from the sky and were doing these things with humans. And it doesn't ever really say they stopped.
Interesting point of view. I'm not, yeah, I've read some of them same passages. One of my perspectives on this is simply as, as some folk do hold to believe that and I want to be careful how I phrase this, the Bible is the hard gospel truth, which, yes, the Bible is the gospel truth. I'm a
Yes.
believer. I believe that. But the Bible leaves gaps. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to take it back to the beginning. The story of the creation of the world in Genesis, 7 days. Okay, we don't know what a day to God was. And then
Right.
add on top of that first chapter, it's creation of the world, animals, and man. All of a sudden we get to Adam and Eve. We know there was such a thing called dinosaurs that have existed on this world. We've seen the bones, the fossils. We don't know what time of span this is. Unfortunately, it's so isolated. Like, because if you think about, like, with the Bible, for example, that's an isolated story. That is
Yeah.
literally a story which takes place in what we know as the Middle East. Literally, just as we see in today, Palestine, Israel, beefs, whatever. Like, the Bible, geolocated, is such a small story in this one place. And we do know that there's a whole entire world.
It's the crazy thing is, and even with like Genesis, that whole book was given to, like, nobody wrote Genesis from recording standpoints. Like, how Well, we know David wrote the Psalms, all that kind of stuff. Not with Genesis. Moses wrote all of Genesis. The same Moses that didn't come around until Exodus. You know what I'm saying? He wrote all of Genesis because God was telling him about it as things were, as he was on top of the mountain. That's how the Bible records it as that Moses received what God was saying, and he then wrote the whole book of Genesis. God was probably just like, you know what? They don't need to know everything will happen. It was a day. You know what I'm saying? Because it just leaves so much room for interpretation. He was like, you know what? They're going to think too much. Let's make it a day. One day, animals. One day, this. One day, light, dark, all that kind of stuff. I mean, and even if you look at the Bible says the earth was here at first. It was just kind of here. Who's to say what was here?
I'm not gonna lie. One of the first things I want to do when I get up to them pearly gates, hopefully, is like, yo, Jesus, we got a library or something. Like, can I see this? Or is there?
Do we have the knowledge that you got right now?
Like, I'm here. What's the story? How does this all work? Like, that's one of the things I hope. Like, yo, can I get a 10-minute praise break to go watch this documentary about the dinosaurs that y'all created, about how it really happened, and be like, oh,
look, I'm trying to see like. So was it evolution, or did you just have a hard time finding the perfect version of us? Did you have a few test runs before you got to Homo sapien?
Like okay, geez, we know what's going on over here. What was happening in the Americas during this time? Did you take some visits that you ain't tell? Like, I want to be like, yo, G, let me get your ear for like 5 years, or I got some questions. I think it's interesting because a lot of people will be like, you can't delve into some of this stuff simply because it raises questions and we can't have those questions, and or they have those questions. Kind of like, well, my God big enough that like none of this stuff before changes, challenges, or erases what we know to be true or believe to be true. Like, there's space for both. There is space for the creation story and Adam and Eve in this garden that is isolated somewhere that we believe was somewhere in Africa, based on, because we don't know whether it was Pangea at that point or things that brought, like, there is such a flexibility and room for these things to exist. But yeah, I just want to be like, yo, so God, how did all this work? Well, let me can I watch the history of the world like a documentary or something? I got some time.
We all got the time. Like, the Old Testament is such an interesting, the Torah, basically what it is. Mm-hmm. The Torah is just an interesting book because there are parts of historical semblance. It's like, okay, I can line it up. Okay, so if it's like talking like this, okay, I can kind of see where they might be. But the other parts are just so without historical placement that you're just kind of wandering with it. You're like, maybe this could have happened here. Maybe this could have happened here.
I mean, you throw in what we believe to be true. One, folks was living a whole lot longer back then.
Right.
Or maybe not everybody, but certainly there were pockets of people who living much longer than we are now. Two, what was my two? I had it in my head. Damn it. But I mean, it's just all these things which give you space to be like, two, we know the calendar system was different. What we have now is the current calendar system is really from the Roman Empire. It used to be there were only 10 months. So when we factor in years back then, it's like, okay, the math changes things. And so it's one of those things like, it's not concrete. And unfortunately, we all know a big part of this being racism and colonialism, wanting to tell this story about how they discovered the world and how they are the purveyors of intelligence, knowledge, and advancement. And it's like, wait, that's one story. And we know a lot of that to be a bunch of BS.
This is correct.
And so it's like, okay, so what we've been led and taught to believe, like Christopher Columbus discovering America, shit, that man ain't do nothing but get lost and never set foot on North America, I believe, at that.
Genocide.
Genocide too.
Genocide.
There's a lot of questionable things out there. Which then again raises, okay, cool. this story is BS to begin with. It's got holes in it anyway.
Well, let's talk
What is
about
this?
how, or I mean, I know we don't. Well, let's go here right quick. Their deliverance of white Jesus and his savior to the black people,
Why, Jesus?
as if Jesus wasn't already a thing to many African communities living in Africa.
Which is what a lot of how do I want to put it? Those folk who like to challenge on you know what folk I'm talking about, who like to
Yeah, you
challenge,
know, yeah, yeah,
especially in this realm that oh this ain't nothing but this African story and this ain't this
yeah.
once again going back to what we said before, people were communicating the same things and having the same ideas and same experiences possibly, and all we have really is this one main account, which is from this one perspective because a lot of different reasons. There is space because you have this African story doesn't mean it makes the Bible irrelevant and vice versa. It very well may be that the African story really is the story being told in the Bible and it's just names like it. Because once again, who's to say? Because we all know, there's books from the Bible not mentioned, not included. Like there's all those theological
Well,
things.
like,
Too much to get into.
have you ever heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Yeah, yeah,
and how the Epic of Gilgamesh is the same exact story as the story of Noah?
yes, yeah.
Who's to say it's just not the same story, different names?
And that's one of the things in the Netflix documentary. This guy, he's like, there's, we have the flood story in the Bible with Noah. He's like, what would that actually physically take to happen? Are there any other accounts historically that we can find which would line up with that, which might be like, okay, this could. And so he was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you have a destruction story over here. You have a destruction story over here. You have a destruction story. It's very well possible. Are any of those Noah? Who knows? Could they all be the same story? Who knows? But it's this interpretive space. And it's like, but once again, like I said, I got some questions for Jesus when I get up there. I was like, yo, go,
Oh,
lay it out for me. Lay it out for me because I'm curious. I just want to know now. I want to know. I'm curious about what happened.
and we're like, hey, so Peter really cut dude ear off, and you picked it up, blew on it, and put it back on. Like, just put it back on.
I'm gonna be like, so during this time between when you resurrected and when you ascended, was you
Oh,
visiting any
snap.
was you visiting anywhere else, Jesus? Was you taking a trip to what was South America and doing some stuff over there? Did you take a trip over to North America and do some stuff? Like I want to be like, because that's a
It's
question.
very interesting how, like you said, the whole Bible, or the Christian Bible, is that region.
It's a small story. It's a small story, and to think that the whole world was
The
existing at the same time. It
the New Testament goes as far over as Asia Minor, because Paul did some stuff over there.
mhm.
But other than that, you don't get above Rome, that area. You don't go as far. You don't ever hit the Americas. That, according to the Bible, that doesn't exist.
This is it is the middle. It's a story that takes place for the most part in the Middle Eastern region of really what we know as like India, Pakistan, like all these stands,
Yeah.
and where a lot of this conflict is happening now. Yeah, it's a small sense. So yeah, what was going on in Europe? What was going on in Asia? What was going on? Africa is pretty big and is quote unquote known as the cradle of civilization. What was going down there in South Africa? What was
Right.
going down in South America? North America? Like there's so many pockets of where we know people were living and civilizations have been that are disconnected from this story that is being told here. What's the crossover? I just want to know,
Right. Right. Like,
is
what was that? What
is
was
whoever's
the turning
deity.
point?
Yeah, or is it whatever deity or maybe a central figure in religious stories of tribes in North America or South America? Is it possible? Yeah, this was just Jesus by another name doing his thing and how he encountered them. It,
Questions that need answers.
that we're never going to get down here, as we know.
Yeah, we're not. We're not.
And I
Not on
think
this
that's some of
side
the
of the.
fun part.
Not on this side of the bridge.
I will say this before we get out of here, though. I do have one question, though. Is back to kind of the aliens piece, though. It seems let's take the assumption that okay, let's assume that we had these ancient civilizations, and yes, they were getting help by aliens. Why don't they want to talk to us now? I'm just curious. We get visited or there's incidents, but why don't like you would think now in our advanced stage, we would be able to have more tangible proof or even more interactions. Or is it that they just came in that one time in this one pocket and have just been gone?
I'm gonna tell you what I really think. The era of time has always been the same for the most part. You begin with visitation. At some point, visitation, or let's just make it practical to humans. Somebody come over to your house. They keep coming over. They keep coming over. At some point, they're not gonna want to leave. They'll just want to stay. And then it becomes from visitation to habitation. So if I were to make this argument, I think at some point they got tired of visiting. Somebody stayed.
Interesting premise.
So this is why we don't see visitations anymore. Could there possibly be habitation?
So then let me push back just a little bit because we have the tree of there's they have what they believe is a good understanding of all the different Neanderthals and where we are in a tree and how essentially all these other aspects or these other additions less advanced, less have fallen off. Is it possible that essentially the way that we were able to advance and become Homo sapien in the way that are you saying it's possibly through some commingling? So maybe we got a little bit of that. I ain't mad at
Definitely.
you.
Definitely.
I ain't mad
For
at
some odd reason, there is something that all species, no matter human, alien, animal, that they like to get down with, and that's some sex. All species. And I do think there was some intermingling.
you. So that's what led to us advancing a little further and being able to develop like, oh yeah, we can do.
It was always, I mean, look back at how certain animal species are. Two animals maybe, get together. Well, I mean, well, except for the mule. The mule is just a lost cause. But two different species get together, have an offspring. That offspring then becomes what takes out another species because they're more superior because of the co-mingling of the two species in the beginning place.
I ain't mad at you, young blood. Like I said, we just having a little fun today. It's Y and Z conversation between the generations.
Oh,
What?
I mean, look, one of our favorite shows. This is Magneto's whole point in the X-Men. We are better than them. Let's take them out.
Is there a next phase? And that is the question. Anyways, Y and Z conversation between the generations. Like, share, subscribe. We wanted to keep it a little light this week. We all know what is happening coming up.
Honestly.
Hopefully, the world ain't going to end when we get together to record against Gears.
I voted early yesterday because I just feel like the polls are going to be crazy on Tuesday.
I voted last week. Gonna have some bated breath, and we'll see what kind of world we're in when
Yeah.
we reconvene once again.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully this a little less stress listening to this half hour, 40 minutes, whatever it turns out to be. Thank you for spending some time with us. Like, share, subscribe. You got a question, you want to be like, y'all are full of ish, or hey, I thought some of the same things too. Let us know. We take all the smoke, good or bad. At YZ The Divide, J Clark 787, The Real Xavier Lewis. Once again, we're available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, a bunch of these other places. Leave a review. Help us out. We just having some fun here. Generations talking. Sometimes we align, sometimes we don't.
No.
Gen Z showed up well today. Yeah, as you.
Oh, that's because I'm crazy in the head. I'm a modern day Galileo.
You're part of Gen Z. We knew you were crazy in the head before. But anyway, stay safe out there, people. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully, the world ain't burning when we come together once again. Until then,
Go vote, by the way.
Yes, please, please vote. Please vote. Please vote.
Use your civic duty and go vote.
Please vote. And vote for the right person. It's not a hard choice. Anyways, peace out.
It's not a hard choice.